This episode is brought to you by the RVA Podcast Network. Find more information at rvapodcast.org.
Season 3 of The Pass is here. I know it's long overdue. We have a new intro. We still got the same content. Well, actually, it's a little bit of new content because there's new things going on in 2019. So buckle up. We got a lot of things to talk about on The Pass. What is up? What's going on? Episode 258 of The Pass is here. I am your host, BT. I am really going to be honest. I didn't know how last week's show was going to go, but I decided I'd do another live show and see if I can learn from what I did wrong. I did get a couple people who did tune in last week, so I appreciate y'all. This week, as you can see, we're set back up. We got all the equipment. You see how we get it in, how we live in it. And we're just going to kind of keep it simple. First things first, because I do want to remember to mention them. I am part of the RVA Podcast Network. If you did listen to the intro, that's one of the first things that comes up. So I want to make sure I give them credit. And also, before I forget, if you have noticed, I did mention this, but I'm going to go ahead and confirm. What's going on, Twin? Welcome to the show. But I also want to confirm that the name change has been made where it is officially called The Pass. So tune in, enjoy. We're going to really get into it. The title of the show, if you're listening to the actual broadcast, is coincidentally going to be the meat and potatoes of this podcast. And it is all Antonio Brown all the time. And that's kind of the best way to put it. And I'm going to there was a question addressed. So if you, Twin, I know we talked about it outside of the show. So if you can just put that question in this chat so I can make sure that I remember to address it, because I want to put all thoughts and everything that's mentioned on paper. So we're going to go ahead and hop into it. There's been a lot that's been going on. I don't know what everybody been doing or what did I miss, but looks like everybody has kind of went crazy. However, I do want to go ahead and return to doing what I love, which is my best, worst thing ever, known as the weekly picks. As many of you may or may not be aware, every week, last season I did do my weekly picks, and thanks for copying that. I'm going to get to that question, so I do have that in the queue. But we're doing our weekly picks from last year, and I'm going to go over the weekly picks from last year, how I did, how horrible it was, and we're going to kind of talk about where we are this year with some of the teams that are playing. So that being said, we'll hop on last year's selections. Overall, I had a semi-decent year. Overall, I was 69, 67, and 1. So I was 0.504, which was about 50%, give or take. That one draw was kind of like a wild card, but hey, it is what it is. And this week is going to be no different. We're starting from week 1. As many of you are or aren't aware, we cannot count Thursday's game because that game has already been played, done in the past. So we're not going to get into that. And these games I'm going to be doing these, making my best effort to record these before the actual kickoff. So that means if I miss the 1 o'clock games, or if the 1 o'clock games are playing and I'm recording, we're just going to say, nah, bump it. We're not going to do anything for that week. So hopping into this week's picks. First off, Tennessee at Cleveland. I don't know why. I might surprise myself. I'm actually going to take Cleveland for that game. Baltimore at Miami taking Baltimore. Atlanta at Minnesota because he just got paid. Take Atlanta. Buffalo at Jets. Pick your poison. I'm actually going to go Jets on that one. Washington at Philadelphia. I'm going to take Philly. Washington hasn't really shown me much, even though they have a rookie quarterback playing. Going into our personal favorite, because Carolina doesn't know whether they want to win or lose. We have the Rams. I'm gonna start the season off a little different. I'm not going to support my team. I'm actually going to pick the Rams for that game. And I'm going to go back, like I say, like I do each week, like I did last year. I'm going to go back, listen to the show, write out each team, and I'm going to confirm that I did say the Rams. So if Carolina surprises us and becomes the Cardiac Cats, then we know what time it is. Kansas City at Jacksonville. I'm actually going to take Kansas City. Colts at Chargers. This will be game 1 without Andrew Luck. I'm gonna pick the Chargers for that game. Cincinnati at Seattle. Going Seattle unless something drastic changes. Giants at Dallas. New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Zeke just got paid, so going Dallas on that one. Detroit at Arizona. Pick you. I mean, what do you have to lose? I'm gonna pick Detroit on this one. The rookie quarterback might get a wake-up call, so we'll see. San Fran at Tampa Bay. I'm actually going to go, and this is weird. I'm not picking Carolina, but I'm going to pick Tampa Bay to beat San Francisco. You heard it here first. And Pittsburgh at New England. That's going to be the late-night game. I think that game has a lot of attention because of everything going on, which we're going to get into in a bit with Antonio Brown. I'm actually going to pick New England for that game. And for the Monday night doubleheader, Houston at New Orleans, I'm picking all the teams in our division to win except us. That's very strange. I'm going to pick New Orleans. Denver at Oakland. Now that, well, I'm kind of going ahead of the story, but now that Antonio Brown is about to basically no longer be a Raider, I'm going to pick Denver for that game. So those are our picks. And as y'all know, I'm usually pretty trash at picking, and it's been that way every year. So don't be surprised if this year is going to be any different. All of that being said, I know what y'all came for, so we're not going to waste any time. I'm going to paint, and this is where I always like to be the storyteller of the podcast, and why I love podcasting anyway. The $1 million question was, is Antonio Brown going to play for the Raiders? Well, we're going to go back before this all occurred, because the first thing that came up, which was still mind-blowing, is that Antonio Brown didn't want to play due to an issue with his helmet. And it was not the actual helmet itself, but the actual guard. He wanted a specific guard. He got his wish. He got the guard. So everything was fine. So we thought. And you pushed forward, and it turned into a battle between Antonio Brown, the GM, and the Raiders. And my twin is watching, but I'm going to say it, and I always have this conversation multiple times. What's going on, Dust? Welcome to the show. And it's important to note before I go into anything further with this topic, no one is bigger than the Shield. Let me repeat that, and let me make sure those in the back heard that. No one is bigger than the Shield. Antonio Brown is a prime example of what this means. The main conflict that came up was that he had threatened to punch Mike Mayock, who is the GM of the Oakland Raiders. So this became, okay, this occurred. Now, what are the Raiders going to do to resolve this incident? Well, the first story came up as, okay, John Gruden confirmed he's going to play week 1. Now, I have all the articles here. I'm going to share them all, but paraphrasing it gives you really the ESPN cut and dry version of what happened. They eventually did leak a video that explained what happened. And that just kind of trickled into, okay, now is Antonio Brown going to play? So it turned out John Gruden said, you know what, we're going to let him play. Cool, no problem. In the midst of this, Antonio Brown comes out publicly and says, hey, I want to be released. Well, what makes it kind of messy and kind of coincidental is he got his wish. And to answer your question, twin, yes, I guess he's a thug. But it looks bad because it's not just him being a thug. It also made him look like a child. Like, you're a professional athlete, and the last thing you want to do is have any form of a physical altercation occur while playing for a team. And I want to make sure I paint this timeline correctly. So if anyone misses anything, I'm going to try to make sure I put you in the right place of everything that happened. The Raiders did fine him nearly $250,000. It was about $216,000. For the sake of discussion, we'll say $216,000. Because of that fine and because he had not played a game, it also factored into his contract, which meant his guaranteed money gone. He ain't getting that. And because of him losing that guarantee, it then led to, well, what are the Raiders going to do? Is it worth investing in him playing or paying him week to week? Because now you're on a week-to-week paycheck. You're literally on a week-to-week NFL salary. And yes, he was a big dummy. And because of that, now his repercussion of it is that he's no longer he's no longer playing for the Oakland Raiders. I don't want to say he's no longer in the NFL because the NFL hasn't gotten involved with this. This is mainly the Raiders themselves. So I'm going to read the story, but not read too much of it. But basically, after a week that involved several twists and turns, the Raiders granted Antonio Brown's request and released the receiver on Sunday. On Sunday, with him being, he was released on today. The release is big because it kind of was just right along with the timeline. He already had put up a post on Instagram saying, release me. So if you ask to be released, you kind of just saying, hey, y'all want me gone? I'm gone. I mean, if y'all want me gone, tell me I'm gone. So the Raiders said, all right, bye. See you later. Following his release, Brown's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, told Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, now that Antonio is a free agent, we are focused on the future, and I will immediately work on signing him to a new team. Antonio is looking forward to a new beginning. Brown isn't subject to waivers and will be a free agent, able to sign with any other team that will have him as early as 4:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. He cannot, however, suit up in week 1. The earliest we could see AB back on the field and in a new uniform is week 2. And yes, the walking out on guaranteed money is weird. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But that was the conflict involving the guard that I talked about a couple episodes back. All right. So, okay. So, and like I told y'all, I'm listening. I'm recording, but I'm also doing Insta Live. So if y'all do see me kind of segue a little bit, talking with chat as well as breaking down some things, then I'm going to get into what's what. So the question that my twin asked, Busho Johime, asked, I want to call you Mama Magfest so bad, but I am anyway. Do you think other teams are going to pick up Antonio Brown after the Raiders cut him? Yes. No one's going to turn down one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. It logically makes no sense to do that. As a team, it's a risk, but it's always that infamous or dreaded term of a risk reward. Exactly what team? It won't be a team in that division. If I was taking an early guess, if he was to do it, it would be out of spite. But there's also going to be the factor of whatever team he goes to, he needs to have a decent quarterback. And as we saw in the Chicago Green Bay game, Trubisky, if you go to Chicago, Trubisky ain't gonna be the one. Obviously, he's not going to. If Green Bay could afford him, sure, but it's also the salary cap factor that comes into play too. And the other question you asked, because I want to make sure I get into that, doesn't that make him look like a risk to pick up with all the drama that has occurred? That ties into. I probably just answered it, but I'll still reiterate it. It's risk reward. A team is willing to take that risk if they know they're getting one of the high-end wide receivers. And it's bad to look at it this way, but come Sunday by 12:45, 12:50, 1 o'clock, teams are going to be thinking of anyone who drafted in a fantasy league draft that drafted Antonio Brown is not letting him go because they know a team's going to pick him up. I would not be surprised because they say he'll clear waivers by 4:01. If he gets picked up by a team tonight, it would not surprise me. If they have a late breaking story at about, let's say, 8, 9 at night, boom, he'll be on a new team. like I said, I don't know what team. I don't have a crystal ball or projector of what team it would be. But that's kind of my answer on looking at him being picked up, or the risk reward factor. Which I hope I answered that question, which I probably did, because I'm always algorithming up. But that's kind of the start to finish of the Antonio Brown drama. And it basically is clear that he did not want the money, or he was just trying to be bigger than the money. So we're going to stick with football, and we're also going to stick with a little bit of money. And I want to make sure I do bring this story up because it was a big deal at its peak point, and that is that Ezekiel Elliott got paid, and no one expected this pay to hit, but it did. He has become the NFL's highest paid running back at $15 million per year. He still is under his rookie contract right now, and that contract he has 2 years remaining for $12.9 million. We're not going to do all the extra numbers. He'll be the first running back in history to ever sign a $100 million contract. This woman from NY, what's going on? Thank you for the birthday love, by the way. I appreciate it. Welcome back. Good to see you. We're just in here chopping up about sports, and you can catch up. We'll get into some stuff because I got some fun stuff coming up that I've literally forgotten about. But thanks for the birthday love. His contract is going to be he's under contract for 8 years running through the 2026 season. And that contract is going to be worth $103 million. The Cowboys have been reluctant to set the running back market during his holdout. It was stated that Dallas shouldn't be too concerned about Elliott becoming the highest paid running back or getting the richest contract. The market didn't get set in more important contract metrics, and the average yearly salary is the most meaningless contract measure since NFL contracts aren't fully guaranteed like the MLB and NBA. The most relevant and analogous deal, I'm probably mispronouncing that all the way wrong, to the Elliott's negotiation was the 4-year, $57.5 million extension, which would have been $60 million through salary escalators, containing $45 million in guarantees. Todd Gurley received, which $45 million guarantees Todd Gurley received from the Rams last July, and it changed the financial landscape for running backs. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit with this because this is kind of fun. Running backs' lifespans in the NFL, on average, if you see a running back play over 10 years, the contracts are nuts. This is nothing. Wait till we get to what one of our rivals got. I'll get into him in a sec. But the actual way that players are, like when it comes to running backs, your lifespan as a running back is not very long. If you break 10 years, that's a breakthrough. If you go back and look at like your old school running backs, the Herschel Walkers, the Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson, Barry Sanders, like all of those guys were good running backs. They didn't get paid that much. O.J. Simpson, Jim Brown, like those guys were getting paid, but they weren't getting, the contract game is a little different now too, because it's more business and branded based. So because of that, teams can afford to pay more because they're getting more on their return on investment. And it's a strange way of looking at it, but it's a reality check if you think about it. If a company hires you and they're paying you for a set amount, and if you're doing the right things to keep that company afloat, that's where your incentives, that's where your bonuses, that's where your extra money comes into play. Now, granted, that's a job that's a 9 to 5, whereas with football, your goal is you get hit helmet to helmet night after night. So that's the challenge of playing football. Like there's a risk that there's a huge risk health-wise, but there's a big reward financially. And the tough part is because concussions are still, and that's a whole separate podcast. I might have to have you on for Twin Talk for that, to talk about like the importance of concussions, especially with what you're doing. But that's a sidebar. So just let that happen. But yes, it's a lot of money, and it's definitely he earned his worth on it. The big one that a lot of people talked about was Le'Veon Bell. He got paid, so there's that factor as well. But those are your two guys. Then they break down just kind of an overall numbers game of this contract and how much he really earned and got going on. Yeah, that's gonna be a whole that one I will probably be a B mic on. I'm not gonna lie, but yes, that concussion discussion of sports and especially football is really a big deal. Sticking with football and another contract, this doesn't sound like a lot, but if you break it down in the metrics of the years, it's actually pretty sick. Julio Jones has gotten his money, and he's actually going to be under contract for 3 years, $66 million. The final year of his contract, if I am not mistaken, is this year, and he's starting that up. Yes, a mic for the win. He's getting 3 years, $66 million, and that's going to start following this season. They don't give. Let me see if they give you the specs. The Alabama product was under contract through 2020 on his previous deal and was set to make a base salary of. So he had a couple more years on the contract. Through 2020 on his previous deal and was set to make $9.6 million in 2019 and approximately $11.4 million in 2020 before this agreement. He's still in his prime and has done nothing but produce. He's been in a couple Pro Bowls. And, it's light work, nothing major, but they haven't given the actual breakdown of the years as of yet. I have a love-hate relationship with Julio Jones. Do I like him as a wide receiver? Absolutely. Is he one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now? Absolutely. We got to say it now because Antonio Brown's gone. Call it what it is. But all of that being said, the love for him stops there because he plays for a rival team. And anyone that's a Carolina fan, anyone that's a Tampa Bay fan, anyone that's a New Orleans fan does not want to see Julio Jones on the field, especially if you have a cornerback lining up against him that cannot stop him from making a play. A lot of people still kind of give grief or have that concern of how he played in the Super Bowl against New England, which I'm still trying to understand that playoff. I mean, that matchup, but that's another story. But overall, as a player and stat wise, what more do you want from him? He posted 100. He had 113 catches for 1,677 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He was a go-to receiver during 2016 when the Falcons reached the Super Bowl, and my laptop locked out. So he finished with 1,409 yards receiving and 6 touchdown catches. Size-wise, what you look 6'3", 220. And has a very strong wingspan. As far as going out, you want him to catch one back, he got you. He gonna catch. That much I will give him. They went ahead and they did lock up one of the best playmakers in the entire league with the deal, keeping him with the only NFL team he has known. So this next couple of years, and they just paid Ryan Leaf, so you kind of saw this one coming. Now, as far as their running back situation, I don't see that being synonymous especially with the other players who have been getting paid. So that's all our money that we've done for today. So everybody get y'all money and negotiate those deals. And if you don't like what you're hearing as numbers, get the right number, but don't reach for the wrong number to possibly lose your job. Just speaking truth. This is a 2% story, but it's a story because there aren't many, and I'm doing this as a whim story, and this is where I'm still in that research learning phase. There aren't many women who have statues outside of sporting facilities. Now, before I go into the story, I personally will say I have a true belief, and if it has already been done, then I will take it back. Cynthia Cooper and Kim Perrott. Matter of fact, I'll say Cynthia Cooper, Kim Perrott, Tina Thompson, and Cheryl Swoops all should have statues in front of the Toyota Center in Houston. Hands down. Only because they were one of the first teams to ever win. I mean, they won 4 championships at the beginning of a league formed. The WNBA formed. Teams got together, they did drafts, all that stuff came together. They won the first 4 championships. And it was like right after she won the 4th championship, Cynthia Cooper retired. What other team or what other player do you know that is capable or has done that? This story is cool in the sense of the statue factor because it comes off of her just winning the Big 3 championship for the triplets basketball team, which I didn't talk about Big 3, and it wasn't on purpose. The truth is, Big 3 was kind of like it came and went, and I caught games as I could because a lot of it I have to catch them on YouTube because it was funny because as long as the games have been on, this is the 3rd year, and one of our friends in the sports group had not known that the games went to 50. He thought it was like a timer and it was a certain amount of time. I was like, no, they go to 50. It's like it's kind of like Hoop It Up. It's Hoop It Up with older guys. Like, that's the best way to put it. But that's all a totally different split. In this regard, Lisa Leslie has become the first female athlete, and that just confirmed my answer. I feel like other players should be getting this, but she is the first female athlete to receive a statue outside of the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The Star Plaza outside of the Staples Center in Los Angeles is about to get a little more crowded as 2-time WNBA champion Lisa Leslie is set to become the first female athlete to be honored with a statue outside of the arena. The date hasn't been determined, but they have agreed to immortalize the WNBA icon with her own statue. Lee Zaidman said that they are going to sit down with Sparks ownership and negotiate a lease for the 2020 WNBA season. They're the president of Staples Center, Microsoft Theater, and LA Live. They do plan on discussing the timing and placement of the permanent statue at the Staples Center, which will honor one of the great all-time WNBA players. Over the course of her career, she was a 3-time WNBA MVP, 2-time WNBA champion, Finals MVP, 2-time WNBA champion and Finals MVP, an 8-time All-Star and 3-time All-Star Game MVP, and 4-time Olympic gold medalist. I mean, who you know getting 4? There aren't many men that have 4 gold medals. Just something to think about. She also wants this still is like an insane stat. Because I don't know who was worse, her or Cheryl Miller. Because I feel like they both were like scorers. But she scored 101 points by halftime for the Morningside High School Monarchs and was the first player ever to dunk in a WNBA game. And overall, the statue celebrating one of the greatest athletes in history of the sport is long overdue, and there isn't a female athlete more deserving of such a prestigious honor. So shout outs to Lisa Leslie for getting your credibility where you deserve it. And most of all, not only getting that statue to be built, but also having the opportunity to come into the Big 3 as I think she's the second women's coach. First year and carrying the team to a Big 3 championship with most of these guys who were on that team, this is their first year. This was their first year in the Big 3. So it just kind of added to like the whole process and just everything that was going on. Welcome. If you're done with sports and you don't want anything else, it's fine. You can kind of sachet. If you want some tech, a little bit of tech, really hadn't seen much tech stuff coming, but that has happened, but there are some things coming. And there was something that happened, and it was an interesting scenario because I was kind of in the middle of it, watching it occur, and it was tough. And hopefully everything has gotten back to normal, but we'll get into that in a second. Let me make sure I get the correct date. We are 3 days away from the infamous Apple iPhone event. Yay! I can't show you the iPhone since I'm obviously on it, but for the sake of discussion, here's our tablet. And the big story that everyone is going to be looking forward to is the official unveiling of the iPhone 11. Some other things that are coming is going to be the Apple Watch Series 5, obviously software updates. My phone now is running the beta for 13.1, which is pretty crisp. Like any beta, it's always got its quirks and qualms, but as long as it's the solid beta from Apple, those are the ones that I will do my best to do. But to get into a brief synopsis of what's coming for Apple, we have the new iPhones. They're looking to be the iPhone 11 Pro, iPhone 11 Pro Max, and the iPhone 11, which is going to replace the XS, XS Max, and XR respectively. So in my case, I would be looking at the 11 Pro Max, but I'm not buying another phone because I have barely had this one a year. And anyone that knows me knows I'm very caring about phones. At least I try to be. Despite the numerical change, the update looks similar to the iPhone 6S to 7 transition. Apple is keeping the designs largely the same. There is a possibility that the camera is going to have a bit of a protrusion where it's going to look like a square. So I want to make sure y'all see that. I'm not sure how that's going to work for people as far as holding or using the phone. But not holding it, but mostly when you sit on tables. The hardest thing about using the newest and latest iPhones is that anytime you put the iPhone on the table, if it's not in a case, it literally has a chance of like slightly sitting up a little bit, and it's very frustrating when you're using it in that magnitude. So there's that. There's also talk of the Apple Watch Series 5, which I just mentioned. There could possibly be some new strap colors. They're going with the tile-esque feature known as Apple Tag, which will kind of be a way of making sure you don't lose your products. Third-party products, I'm going to assume, are going to work for this. This is basically going to be that option of if you got your AirPods and don't know where they are, the tile will be able to, or the Apple Tag will be able to figure it out. Apple TV hardware is going to have the faster A12 processor. For those who are not big techies, that means nothing. For people who may have had if you had the Apple TV, like the first generation, this is probably that time to say, you know what, I can go ahead and step up and get a new one. So let me make that bump of that transition. And that's just what it is. And you have of course, you have the software. We're looking at iOS 13, iPad OS, Watch OS 6, TV OS, the HomePod, and Mac OS 10.5 Catalina. We're going to get some views and information about that. Now, what my plan is, and I'm projecting this a little early, and I need to talk to the other person to make sure it happens, but next week, I'm possibly going to have a guest on the show, and it's going to be I'm already forecasting it's going to be called Everything Apple, to kind of deep dive and talk about everything that Apple's done or Apple is doing. And this conversation came up with my twin, if she's still in this podcast or on Instagram Live. The innovative wave is starting to diminish, and it's a hurting thing to accept, but we're here. There's not much more innovation you can provide based on what we already have. And that's kind of the cleanest and simplest way to put it. They also have some services, some subscriptions that they're going to be looking to talk about. They want to push TV Plus. What's going on, Ash? How you feeling, sis? Welcome to the show. Hope you enjoy this. This is be right up your alley. We're talking about the tech flow for the Apple keynote that's coming up on Tuesday, if I remember correctly. And it sucks because the day that it comes out, I won't be able to see it live, but I may see it live. I don't know yet. I'm gonna figure it out. They are going to possibly bring up the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is going to be a weird number because most of the time it's usually 13, 15, and 17. So getting a 16-inch MacBook never hurts. Yeah, if you do get some worthwhile updates, definitely send them to me. If anything, if you're really keeping up with it, tweet them so I can retweet some stuff because I'm going to be watching when I can, while I can, when it's like a chill point and catching up. They are looking at doing the Mac Pro and Pro Display release dates. And it's also the infamous one more thing. So we'll see what that one big thing is. Don't have a clue yet because obviously we got to wait for that day to come. So yeah, that's kind of the story of what's going on with the Apple iPhone 11 event. Because it's not going to just be the iPhone. There's going to be other things that they bring out. It's only fitting. This is not a small story because I didn't realize the extent of it until I was really looking at different sites and companies. Xbox Live was down last night or yesterday. A lot of people didn't know what to do. If you have not learned one thing in life, when technology goes down, people can't function because now humans have to talk to other humans. Before these things came out, or before this thing came out that we're on now, like we have to actually interact. And T-Mobile went through a bit of an outage where there was an issue with voice calls. Now the internet service worked fine, but the voice calls were a little acting up a little bit. My mom actually experienced it where she was having a difficulty with her act. Like I was trying to call her, she couldn't answer the call, so I tried to call her back. And it was a tough time. She was texting me and telling me what happened. And I'm like, I knew someone, I happened to know someone personally who was able to give me information of what was going on during that time period. So that was kind of like keeping me in the loop as well. So I appreciated that. And I also have a new site that I can kind of keep track on different tech stuff. And I'm not really, I can't say it's not public because it's the internet. You can look for whatever you're trying to find. Like it's one site that I normally go to called Is It Down to see what sites are down. But I believe PlayStation Network may have been down. Sprint was a little wonky. T-Mobile was a little off. Everyone was like, well, all of them down, but Verizon's working fine. And I'm like, you do remember, and I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but I will. And if I'm wrong, correct me because I'm all about being educated. Verizon runs, like all carriers run through Verizon. Just saying, but it also is the factor of affording Verizon, so that there's that window as well. But U.S. mobile carrier T-Mobile suffered an outage with customers on the East Coast unable to make voice calls. Calls immediately disconnected after dialing a number. T-Mobile didn't immediately respond to requests, but there were about over 14,500 reports of the service being out. Most of these reports were coming from Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C., Newark, New Jersey, Chicago, Houston, Providence, Rhode Island, and Baltimore. And you know what's funny? Okay, you say Sprint is a little wonky. And it's interesting for me. I have Sprint now, and it's all in where you are. If you're in a certain area, you can forget it. Like I've said this to people all the time. Here where most of my friends are, if you're in, let's say, the country, on one end of the country in Charles City per se, you'll get good service if you have Sprint, but you'll get horrible service if you have any other carrier. And it's the exact opposite if you're in, not Sandstein, Caroline County. If you're in Caroline County, if you got Verizon, you good. You got anything else and you go in somebody's house, you better hope they got Wi-Fi or you're going to have problems galore. But we also have this new technology that we don't use enough. And I think it's kind of the new wave, Wi-Fi calling. If you got Wi-Fi in your house and you are able to, and it's not going to like be a major burden on your data, Wi-Fi calling. But yes, Sprint has been wonky. I never sit there and make it like it's a great service. It's just tough because the contracts and the prices, it's a lot, but I'm gonna go as quick away from that because I don't want to run off course with that story. But yeah, they did say that West Coast customers were unaffected by that. Verizon customers were only impacted when trying to make. And let's see. Let me read the update. Is there an outage somewhere in Philadelphia or Southern PA area? For some reason, calls will not go through between me and my family's cell phones, but texts are going through fine. Someone tweeted this at 2:27. West Coast customers appear to be unaffected. As of 2:17, Metro PCS was also flagged as having issues. It was joined by U.S. Cellular and AT&T with almost 700 reports. Down Detector also noticed issues across Verizon and Sprint as well. Verizon customers were only impacted when trying to call customers of other networks experiencing issues. Verizon added that it had only very minimal outages that were related to Hurricane Dorian. And that was the other reason. It was all because of the hurricane. But those were limited to one area of Outer Banks, North Carolina. Quick story. Not quick story, but like, this has been a chill news week. I'm not going to lie. Like, and this is going to be shocking. I don't have an ass of the week this week, but I do have a message to pass along, and I'm going to pass it because it was shared with me, and it was really something that I needed to hear. But before we do that, we'll get into, let's see, I'll do music sesh first, and then we'll talk about the music story that I have available. Okay, so I'm going to start with the good. I know a lot of people's listening is always not limited, but, catch what you can, while you can, when you can. But if you have the chance, please listen to Sir. Sir's album is off the chain. I am in love with that album. I'm going to give it more of a listen. And that's just all I got. IDK has an album called Is He Real? Another good album. I just kind of played it through and it flowed for the point of me listening. The Beatles has a new album. I'm trying to think who else is that I'm really listening to or did have a chance to listen to. I haven't listened to Melanie Martinez. It's a single by Tiny, Jesse Reyes, and Tory Lanez. Not a bad single. Check that out if you have a chance. One Republic has a new single called Want It. Give that a spin if you'd like. I tried to listen to Sleeping with Sirens. Not too bad. It was something that I kind of caught on a whim. And finally, it's an EP by Alicia Cara. She did the song Here, and she has a EP that came out, 6 tracks. It's about 18 minutes long. Not bad. It's pretty, like, it's good listen. I know a lot of them would say it's pretty good, it's good listen, but these albums are listens that I've been on and have been checking out. So if you do have time, definitely give them a listen. I didn't mention it last week, or if I forgot, Common has a new album. Started to listen to it, but haven't really given it the full listen. And I've talked about this on the show before. How you consume music is important, because if you're listening to it through AirPods versus speaker versus cans, as most people call it, it's a big difference. And I'll just leave it at that. So those are our music. That's our music sesh, or your AirPods escape, or your headphone escape, whatever you listen to or however you play your music. It's been nearly a year, and they have they've charged Cameron Pettit, who was the person who sold the drugs to Mac Miller. They have him detained at the time, or they have him under arrest or whatever. And yes, before I continue, this woman from NY, yes, it is a new album. I'm gonna definitely, like I said, I want to listen to it more, and I'll come back next week to give it the personal, whether it's all right, I'm not sure yet. So just give me time. I'm definitely working on being better with listening to more music. I try to, because it's so many artists. But this was on September 4th. And by the way, before I continue, because I guess this will go into stuff as well, because I had this written down, but I didn't talk about it. I have officially reached, quote unquote, the 37th chapter of my life. I'm 37 years old. And I know I was talking about my twin. She's a year younger. We celebrate our birthday together. And I'm going to be honest, 37 doesn't feel the same, but it doesn't feel different. Like, it's another number, don't get me wrong, but as far as the feeling and what I'm working on and what I'm trying to do, everything has been about striving and pursuing and going for more. I'm not as available as I used to be for the sake of sanity or just calm or simplicity, however you want to pin it. But most of it is, there are things that I'm working on. There's work to do. There's unfinished business. There's just stuff that I'm leaving behind. There's opportunity I'm leaving behind. And I'm going to get into the hit of that in the past the message part, but I'm just wanting to talk about that because I did just celebrate my 37th birthday. So I'm going to give a more deep dive of that when we get to the year review. Y'all know it's going to be lit this year. We're only in September, but this year's year review, I'm telling you now, I'm doing a live. I'm probably going to be, I may not be in a library. I'm going to warn you now because I might be drunk. But for the sake of the podcast and for premium content. But it's gonna be under control. It's gonna be fun, trust and believe. I may have guests on. Just keep that in mind. I'm also working on some side segments, but I also got to make sure everybody's on board with doing it because I don't want to just throw people to a show and they're not ready to podcast either or record. But Cameron Pettit, who was denied bail, faces up to 20 years in prison. Despite the eerie timing of the case, the case was not timed to coincide with the anniversary of Mac's death. The government released a 42-page criminal complaint against Pettit that goes into the details surrounding the night Mac brought the drugs that killed him. They give a breakdown of the documents, of what those documents reveal, and a summary of the case against him. And it just kind of goes into the full breakdown with the government. Still can't believe it's been a year, not gonna lie. Prayers to his family. And it was on he passed on the 5th, but it was an ironic, and I guess I'm thinking about it on the 4th when I talked about the chapter 37 because it was all coincide. But it's tough because you look at an individual like him that was just good at his craft, and we lost him on just a unexpected. No one was prepared for that at all. So prayers to his family. And also, I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be with Cameron Pettit, but I just hope they are able to come to a proper form of justice in regards to his well-being as well. All right. Like I said, no ass of the week this week. I know I'm slipping because normally I find some good story. Twin, I'm blaming you. No, actually, I'm not blaming you. I'm taking responsibility for it because I didn't do a lot of research on many stupid articles this year. I mean, not this year, this week. But next week, it's going to be more chill. So I guess I'm giving y'all a break on asses of the week for a while because I got some stuff coming. I got one for next week. I have another person the week after. And I'm just going to kind of keep the show flowing to be a better podcaster. But all of that being said, my message that I'm going to pass to you all is very, very clear and very concise. And that is to find out what you're meant to do. And I'm going to give a story, but I don't want to make this into like a long drawn out discussion because I'm working better on not tiptoeing that 1 hour mark, but still giving you like everything without reading everything to y'all like y'all can't read. But I can't believe I just did that. But let's go back. On September 4th, I got text messages, I got Facebook posts, I had comments, I had conversations, I had time with friends, and every bit of it was appreciated. I'm a big family guy. I'm a fan of family, always have been, always will be. And to say it without saying it, my biggest thing now is I'm more in tune with making sure that I keep a better connection with those who aren't close. And one of those who aren't close, but we've always been close, is my brother. My brother is, I don't want to say I guess it was said, so I can say it now because it's not a big deal, but I took the role of being a baby from him. And okay, I understood it. As when I was young, it didn't make sense to me. I didn't know what it meant because I'm just looking at it as I'm living. So there was a lot of resentment for a while, but it was also an interesting factor because without me connecting with him the way I did, I wouldn't have gotten into journaling the way I do now. He started writing me letters back and forth. I told people this story personally, but I'm telling this story on the podcast for the sake of content. And he, would always write me a letter, and I was into like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stationery. I even have, I want to say Raphael. I have Raphael's Funko Pop just because like that's kind of my security blanket with my brother. And I don't have it out, but I may need to resurrect it and give it some attention in the sense of just having it out as a reminder that he's with me. He's still here. It's not like he's gone or anything, but he's in another state, in another time zone. And he called me on my birthday, and I didn't respond. I didn't call him back. He left a voicemail, everything. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get back to him. Wednesday passed. Thursday passed. Friday arrived, and I was like, you know what? I had a little bit of a block, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get ready to take a nap. Before I took a nap, I went ahead and gave him a call. The call I had with him was the call I needed, and it comes back to this conversation that I'm sharing with you all now about knowing what it is that you're trying to do or figuring out what you're trying to do. Because he asked me a couple questions, and I was honest in not being sure what I wanted to do. I went to school for one thing. I went to school for something else. I want to go to school for something totally different, all for better and higher degrees. But then the $1 million question becomes, at the end, and once this is all done, what are you trying to do? And that is something that I never really took time to think about until it was brought up in a conversation. And when he did that, I had to kind of step back and say, you know what? It's time for me to really figure out what my purpose in life is, or what is it that I want to do. If y'all know me on a personal level and you want to have that conversation, passpodcastbt@gmail.com. You can definitely send me your thoughts of what you may think I'm trying to do or what you might feel like my niche is. Or if you just want to have a conversation in general about it, y'all know me on social, the Past BT on all platforms. But my message that I'm passing along is whatever that thing is that you know you're meant to do. I know I always say, yeah, whatever it is that you're meant to do it and do it well. What I'm going to say is if you know what your thing is, don't let anyone or anything else stop you from doing it. And sometimes we get so caught up trying to avert to something else or going to something else or jumping to this or jumping to that instead of really taking time and saying, what is it that I want to do or what is it that I want to achieve to become a better person? And me becoming a better person obviously means financially, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, like every bit of the facet, and just being in the right state of mind to get to the right place that I belong. And right this particular second, I'm still trying to figure that out. So if you've reached that point, props to you. If you haven't, take a look in the mirror, do a self-assessment, and find out what that thing is. That went a lot longer than expected, but I wanted to get all of that into a good message to pass along to y'all tonight or today or whenever you listen to the show. But thank you all for everybody who's on Instagram Live. Thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Thumbs up if you're still here. If you're not, I understand because it is like an hour show. But regardless, I'm truly thankful for what I've grown this to become, because anyone that knew me when I first started this podcast, I wasn't giving a lot of effort to it. And now this is like, it's almost like second home to me, where I'm always like getting into my craft and just making it work. But as I always share at the end, and I'm sharing it here, so you'll hear it twice. If you're looking to get into podcasting, Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast. That is where my podcasts are stored. I may work on the domain change. I don't know yet, but I also want to let some stuff come together first before I like to start making decisions. And also, if you are looking to get a good microphone, the Blue Yeti is everything. Now, I'm using the Blue Yeti in its weird manner of a stand and a shock mount. But if you are looking to just use it with the stand and set it up, by all means. I mean, if I had it, I would probably use the scissor arm because I was a scissor arm fan. That might be my favorite way of using this mic. But that is all I have for today. Again, thanks for tuning in. Continue to be on the lookout for more shows, for greater shows. And until next time, Pat signing out. Also, one last thing. Next week, I will have a guest. I'm going to make sure I finalize everything with that guest to get them on the show because it's going to be a fun show. And if I don't have them, I got a backup plan. I'm always figuring something out. So y'all take it easy. Peace. Another episode is in the books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. As I always share, if you'd like to get into podcasting, you can check out Spreaker.com. And if you're looking to invest in a microphone or if you're looking to genuinely start with recording, I use the Blue Yeti microphone, but you may prefer to do the Samson Meteor. Just know that if it's your craft and it's something that you're meant to do it and do it well. That's my main thing to tell people about 2019. Do it and be reliable. Y'all take it easy.